that this discussion is happening here in Ibadan is not by accident. Ibadan has always served as the political capital of the Southwest and indeed Nigeria. And let me sound a note of warning for those that are carrying on as if there will not be tomorrow. They should remember that Operation Wet here started from here. This is the same wild west.
In-depth analysis.
I'll put it in a perspective. The late Obafemi Awolowo, the premier, and the leaders of the party in the Western region. The crisis between them caused a major violence in the country. The wet here is a Yoruba word that wet it, and which turned out to be what they call the Wild West. And it was a situation where politicians' houses and properties were being burned. And it really was a down moment in the history of Western region that make up part of the Southwest and some other parts of Nigeria today. And if the opposition is warning that what led to that was politics. Politics of anger, politics of feud, politics of discontent about the state and the running of political parties, which led to the election of 1965 and the reason why the military came in 1966. And they are warning to say, look, politicians should be careful about some of these rhetorics and some of these narratives that could lead into political tension in the land and that could bring some kind of illegitimacy to the process of our electioneering. Is it a moment of reflection? Let's even assume that the opposition is wrong in their narrative or in their argument. But is it a moment of reflection that the government of the APC is in power and the opposition is raising this kind of caution? Is your party for a moment thinking about the nation and this narrative that could cause some kind of violence in Nigeria? And how are you working to ensure that this does not happen? Let's even assume that they are dreaming. Let's forbid that this ever happens. Are you working towards to ensure that our nation does not get into the wild west that we saw in the political crisis of 1962 and 1966, which led to the coup?
You see, there's nothing that happened in Ibadan that concerns us. Now, I didn't focus on all of this conversation. My interest was the really despicable threat to violence issued by the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde. That was the focus of our, commentary today. Because whatever else they said, they had a right to say what they want. But no one, however highly placed, has a right to threaten the corporate existence of Nigeria by conjuring up, an episode in our history that is truly the darkest of it all. A period that Nigeria bled, our people bled, people were burnt alive. There was nothing romantic about that event, the Operation Wet here. So for a sitting governor who constitutionally is actually the chief security officer of Oyo State to bandy around this threat, that is really disgraceful. I think Governor Makinde should be ashamed of himself, quite frankly, because it's wrong for him to do that. People in leadership bear exceptional responsibility to speak with restraint and with decorum and with some sensibility. You don't sit there as governor, you wield enormous authority, and you incite people who are beneath you, to violence. That is not democratic. That is completely anti-democratic. And I think that, I hope the security agencies are listening to Governor Makinde and to take that threat seriously. Because, Governor Makinde himself was born in 1967. He was not born in 1965 when Operation Wet here decimated lives and changed the trajectory of our politics in the Southwest. He was not born. So I want to assume that he had no idea and has no idea, probably has not even read of that history, to understand the enormity of this, threat that he issued yesterday. You know what, personally, as a citizen of Nigeria, I'm utterly disappointed in the governor of Oyo State. On what basis do, the entire opposition, or Governor Makinde himself, allege that the APC is somewhat orchestrating the emergence of a one-party state. How is that done? You and I know that the one-party state is not something you throw around. This is, a legal and constitutional construct. To take a multi-party system like we have in Nigeria and turn it into a one-party state, it's not done casually. The process of constitutional amendment is not one that is easy to accomplish in a democracy. You don't do that. You see, but if the allegation is based on the fact that, the APC has been the destination of choice for political actors who are decamping, leaving their terribly run parties, their parties that are in intractable crisis, to come into our party, and that we have about 31 governors today who are members of our party, if that is the reason for all of this, nonsense, then quite frankly, there's no case to be made by these, characters. Under President Obasanjo, you will recall that the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, governed this country with 30 governors. And President Obasanjo was on record many times where he asked the question, say, look, in my party, referring to the PDP, we have 30 governors who have joined the party, who are members of the party. How do you expect us to lose, national election? He asked. He said that with audacity. He asked that question, and these characters today, the likes of Atiku Abubakar, were members of that party. Atiku Abubakar was not on record objecting to the PDP, bringing in all of these elements to the degree of 30 governors and almost, a total grip on the parliament. The specter of one-party state did not play at that time. Why? What is different now? You see, this conversation is difficult because, I'm not sure the allusion to APC using subterfuge to, discombobulate the opposition. We're not doing that. Just to be clear, we're not.
Mr. Moka,
I hear you.
I mean, for someone who has experienced opposition party, when President Bola Tinubu, for example, was the leader of the opposition, you know the kind of manner in which it took on the Obasanjo government at the time, and he was a fierce man, bold, courageous, audacious. He fought fiscal federalism. He was one who led that movement in the Southwest, and we saw how AD transformed into AC to ACN, and they came to form the APC. And I remember vividly how President Bola Tinubu was criticized at a governorship election in Ekiti State, when at the campaign he said, rig and roast. And, the party at the time was explaining what he meant by rig and roast. And I remember Governor Fayemi was saying, he didn't literally mean that. He meant that elections should be fair. And I don't see in opposition will say, if the president at the time had told Jonathan that this election is rig and roast, why are you worried that the opposition is also saying, do not rig this election, do not turn our democracy upside down? By the way, Mr. Moka, when you reference Obasanjo era of 30 governors, they were elected governors. They were not defectors to another political party. I mean, is it a case of karma, isn't it?
No, please. See, don't even attempt, my dear friend, to draw a distinction between governors who are elected and those who choose to defect. What they have in common, and why you can't differentiate, is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is the Constitution that gives authority to, conduct and participate in elections, in exercise of your freedom of association. It is that same freedom of association that underpins the decision by any Nigerian to join the APC. So there's no distinction to be made whether a governor joins the APC, in exercise of that freedom of association, or joins or gets elected, again, in exercise of that freedom of association by belonging to a political party. It is one and the same. There's no difference to be made. Unless you want to begin to cherry pick, what aspect of the Constitution is superior to the other, and I won't do that. I'm a lawyer. The Constitution is to be read and understood holistically. So let's rest that, argument. Point is that today we have 31 governors. Back then, the PDP had 30 governors.
Let me quickly, because of our time, the opposition seems to be very ready, and they're all coming together in one basket, saying, we're coming for Bola Tinubu and the APC, and we're coming hard. they're forming one voice, and they say for the very first time we're seeing opposition come like that to say we're going to field one candidate, we are going to come under one ticket, and they're saying that be worried, we will come. Is the APC in trouble? Because when you have forced all of them into one basket, they're now coming for you in unity. That should scare you, isn't it? And they're saying, look, Professor Joash Amupiton should not conduct this election, and they're standing firm on that. Does this bother you at all? And they've also called President Bola Tinubu a one-time president. What is that narrative? Is it making you jittery already?
What's cost-free? As long as you have got given breath, you can say whatever you like. And the fact that you can say whatever you like should not result in anybody losing sleep. All of those things are just sound with no fury to it. The APC is unperturbed. We have no reason to be perturbed because
just to jump in, and we've had this conversation about what your party has described as a rhetoric in the sense that you are asking for evidence. You are saying that there are no hard facts to what the opposition is referencing. But there are those who say there seems to be some element of subterfuge, some element of using other factors to push for everyone or all the major opposition figures to come into one basket, and that they're referencing that is dangerous for our democracy. But they also are making reference to those who are directly or indirectly linked to your party, who are being used or they are figuring as the leader of the opposition to the opposition parties in court, using the institution of the judiciary to decimate these political parties. For example, a direct reference has been made to what Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila said at a social event where he was advising an honorable to say the opposition should be decimated, should they go after them, take over the party. And even the president has been referred to in some of his statements to the extent to the president say, well, if the opposition party wants to fail, that he's happy that it fails. Well, naturally one would think that the failure of your opposition should be your own joy. But then at the end of the day, it's a failure of our democracy, don't you think, Mr. Moka?
No, Sheon, please. And, your reference to what the chief of staff to the president said at that, informal event. Let me ask a question in response to that. Sheon, are you telling me today that if David Mark or Peter Obi Atiku Abubakar heard that the APC was imploding, that, there was some civil war erupting in the APC, so you're telling me that Atiku Abubakar, whether in private or in public, will not, exercise or express some satisfaction